This is the Born to Be podcast, where we believe you were created on purpose and for a purpose. Each week, we deliver inspiration and interviews with today's top thought leaders who are living out their unique calling every single day. Are you ready to discover your true identity and become who you were born to be? The future is yet to be created. And now, here's your host, Darren Earlywine.
Oh my goodness, welcome back to another episode of the Born to Be podcast. Darren Earlywine, your host, here with you. And you know what? I don't think I say it enough. I just want to start this episode by saying thank you for listening and thank you for downloading. And I'm going to ask a major favor of you. Here's what I need you to do. I know you're mowing the lawn. You may be on the treadmill. I don't know what you're doing when you're listening, but thank you for listening. But when you're done, I need you to go to iTunes and leave us a review, review or some comments, something to help us build up that comment and review section of the Born to Be podcast so people know that, listen, it's worth the time to listen to because we've got great guests, great content, and I just need your help. So if you go give us maybe a 4 or 5 star, maybe you add a star, it becomes a 6-star review. No one has those. We would be the only podcast. But it would mean the world to me if you would go and like and review the podcast on iTunes, share it on Facebook, and just all the social stuff. And thank you to those of you that are already doing that. But we're really excited. I say that every episode because I am. I look forward to recording the podcast because we get to meet and hear the stories of so many amazing people. And today in studio, we have the one and only Tanorria Askew with us. And Tanorria, how are you?
I'm fabulous.
Tanorria, this is your first time on the Born to Be podcast, but you have been a part of the old Radio Theology podcast. You've been on the Radio Theology show. You've been all over all the theologies, but this is your first time on Born to Be.
Yes, thank you for keeping me relevant. I need that help.
I love it. Maybe you say, you know what, Tanorria, I've heard that name before because it's a unique name, but here's how you've heard it. If you watched Master Chef Season 7, you saw Tanorria go into the final four of Master Chef, and right now, she's blowing up all over the place. Her company, Tanorria's Table, you got to go check it out. Tanorriastable.com. And just so you spell it right, it's Tanorria, Tanorriastable.com. And Tanorria, I love your story. I'm excited for the Born to Be podcast listeners to hear it, to be inspired by it. So thanks for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for spelling my name. I always ask my mom, why couldn't you name me Susie Smith?
That would have been easier.
Right?
Yes, I like it. Did I ever tell you that the spelling of my name, the importance and soul of it?
No.
Okay, let me tell you. Because you, as an African American woman, I think you appreciate the origins of my name. I feel like I knew we were connected somehow. Now I know it's because of the spelling of my name. Okay, so there's lots of Darrens, Darren, totally incorrect way to spell it. Or there's I's in there, whatever. My name is one R and an O, Daron.
Right.
Did some research because it's unique. Found out it is the African feminine spelling of my name.
What?
Yes. So as white as I am, from a farm in Illinois, I feel like deep in my soul somewhere, I am an African woman.
Okay. So, I'm going to give you that. I can't even comment to that.
Yeah, where do you go from that? I'm just saying. I didn't name myself. Those are my roots. That's all I'm saying. Wow. Anyway, it's not
your
about
hair
me.
is way too fabulous to be an African.
Well, you should see it right out of the shower. It just completely stands. Anyway, listen, this is not about my hair or my stupid name. So, I want to get into your story. You national, notoriety and attention for Master Chef, but we're going to get there. But I want to start and go back to the beginnings of your story because I met you when we really began to interact more regularly was about a year before the whole Master Chef thing popped off.
Yep.
And we're at a discipleship event called Disciple X with a good friend of mine, Eric Fish. And I remember that day, I think you were still working at the credit union.
Yep.
And you were just kind of pouring out your heart of this dream that you have of Tanorria's Table and to be a chef and just trusting God with that. And I want us to unpack how that happened. In the next 12 months after that day, after we prayed with you, were life-changing. We're going to get to that part of the story. But I want to push rewind and go even further back and say, as a kid, Little girl Tanorria.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, when did you get this? Did you back then have any kind of vision or heart of like, you know what? I would love to bring joy and happiness to people through food. Where did that start?
Definitely. So my grandparents and my parents were always the people that did all the cooking and had people over. Every holiday, especially because we're from Tennessee. So when we moved here, we didn't have a lot of family here. So we were always inviting people over, hosting. My grandmother was, I don't even remember what they call them, one of those important people at church that always cooked when something was happening. My grandfather was a deacon at church. My dad was a deacon at church. And so I just knew that food got people to hang out with you. I knew that food built community. I knew that good times were centered around food, but I also kind of respected the concept that bad times were centered around food as well. So I knew that that was a thing. I did not accept it as a career for myself. I was supposed to be corporate America, 9 to 5. You get good grades, you go to college, you get a good job, all those things you're supposed to do.
Was that instilled in you by your parents? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
And totally not in a bad way, because, I mean, my dad's the hardest working man I know, and my mom sacrificed so much for her family, but I just thought that was the path.
Yeah.
And they kind of said that path is wide open as long as you do it. So my dad wanted me to be a teacher, I think. No, my dad wanted me to be a journalist, which is so weird. And my mom's like, you can do anything you want, honey. So yeah, I went to college. I went to the first school that accepted me because that was easy. And I realized that I could be doing more and decided to work full-time and go to school full-time.
Wow.
I did not have to do that. I chose to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I did, because I started my corporate career in college. So it was really easy for me to have some credibility and sustainability then out of college.
Yeah.
But I stayed with the same company for 15 years because that was safe and easy. And I had all of these things kind of keeping me nice and cozy. And so there came a point where I finally moved out of my parents' house because I lived with my parents while I went to school. And I mean, I liked buying new cars and getting massages and doing all these great things. So I was like, who wants to pay rent when you can live at home?
Yes.
And get manicures every week. So I finally moved out on my own. And I said I was not moving out on my own until I was able to afford the lifestyle that I had for myself. So it took a couple promotions.
Sure. Yeah.
At the credit union. And finally, when I got that promotion of assistant manager, I was like, okay, I can move out on my own. And I did. And that's where it really kind of became this aha moment that, oh, yeah, like I'm a really good cook because I'm at home cooking for myself. Mom's not doing it all the time now. It's how I'm telling my friends to come over on a Friday or Saturday night. And they're saying they love it. And they're telling me I should sell it. And I'm like, what? I should sell my food? That's not a real thing. I'm not a chef.
Right.
So that kind of lived with me for quite a while before I thought, okay, I'm doing this.
So it wasn't like you noticed the connectivity and the gathering and healing ability of bringing people around a table as a kid, but you pursued, but for 15 years, you were working in a credit union. So that it wasn't like your pursuit. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, God put me on earth to cook. That was you noted the power of it, but then we're just in life, and then it starts to kind of bubble to the surface.
Yeah, totally. I would have never in a million years thought I'm on this earth to feed people. But now I can't say that enough, because that is absolutely why God put me on this earth.
So in that journey with childhood up to that point, was faith and a connection to God something that was paramount to you and your family?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad is so holy. Sometimes I think he is Jesus. So I definitely grew up with faith as a priority. And growing up, I mean, I was strong in my faith, and then I thought boys were cool. And I was strong in my faith, and I cared about marching band. And I was strong in my faith, and I was off to college discovering myself. Right. So Jesus has always been there. I've always believed in the Lord. I don't know that I always lived for the Lord.
Sure.
And that definitely came to light for me, and a clear understanding of what that looked like right after I got married and my parents moved away from here. And I didn't have that safety net anymore.
So I'm guessing this happened shortly after you got your promotion and moved out of the house and got your own life going.
It happened about 7 years later.
Oh, okay.
About 5 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, about 5 years after I was finally being an adult. My parents left me. I like to say that to make them feel bad. They just moved back like 3 weeks ago. But yeah, it was when they left and I realized that, I couldn't hang on to mom and dad anymore. I have to be an adult, and kind of like pulling all of those things that they instilled in you, was necessary. And during that time I was fairly newly married. But the marriage wasn't good from probably 6 months in.
Oh, wow.
So I had no choice but to hold on to Jesus, because really, once my parents left me, that really was what I felt like all I had at the time.
So as you're going through that, all the changes. You've built your career, you get a house, life's continuing on, you fall in love, you get married, things aren't good, and you're at a place where they go from they're not good to they're really bad. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I think there's somebody listening right now that they may have. Maybe they have dreams, or maybe they haven't even gotten connected to a sense of dream in their life because they're in a place of pain. They're in a place that's really dark. Can we go to that space when the marriage was getting tough and things, and you're clinging on to Jesus, but I'm guessing there wasn't a lot of big dreams in that season.
Right. That's an excellent way to put it. At that point in my life, I felt like I was exempt from dreams coming true. I felt like I was exempt from God's goodness. So to dream or hope, like, that's not a real thing to me at that time in my life. So there was.
Why would you be exempt?
Mainly because my husband at the time was so focused on him, and it really was a matter of me being in survival mode just to deal with whoever he was going to be that day. So I think because there was so much expected, unexpected, if that makes sense. Like, I expected there to always be chaos, but I never knew what that was going to look like from day to day. So, it could be a matter of coming home and he could be in a good mood, or it could be coming home and he could be stupid and crazy. And there came at least 3 times where I feared my life.
Oh my gosh.
So when you're in survival mode, you're really just trying to make it through the day with a smile on your face. So hopes and dreams and like light at the end of the tunnel really did not exist. And so, I kept cooking, and that was really my 100% my therapy was being in the kitchen. It was my happy place. And I feel like even in that time, that relationship with the kitchen was unhealthy because I was dependent on it. But there finally just came a point where I realized that the only person that was going to help my ex-husband was himself, and he didn't want to. And so no matter how many books I read, no matter how many women I went to sharpen iron, no matter how much wisdom I got, if he's not doing anything, then I'm just going to continue to live in fear. And so finally, and at this point, I had gotten pretty rooted in a new church, and a new community of people. And I feel like that exposure was kind of like, okay, life could be like this. It doesn't have to be the way it is. And I was incredibly conflicted with ending a marriage. Like, you're a Christian, you don't do that, right?
Right.
And it wasn't until I spent time with my therapist and talked to my mentor every single week and kind of unfolded why I was so consumed with why it wasn't okay for me to get a divorce. Ultimately, it ended up not being anything about me being concerned about Jesus. It was more about concern what people would think of me. And I had to let that go. And once I let that go, I realized, okay, I can't live like this anymore because I may not live for very long. And I decided to leave. Once I left, it was still survival mode. I didn't know what was coming next. I just knew that I needed to be safe, I needed to be stable, and I needed community. That's all I knew. And that's really all that mattered at the time. But that community of people is what really kind of opened my eyes to how cooking could be a real thing. I got exposed to people that lived life unconventionally. And that was from church. People who don't go to 9 to 5s, but they're still sustained and thriving and serving. People who don't have to have super established careers to be incredibly successful. And I think I also learned what success really meant, because I constantly thought success meant promotions, houses, raises, credibility, what conference you were going to and who was the speaker and what you learned. Like, I thought all of that was success. And I still think to a point that is success, but that kind of success doesn't have to define who I am.
So I'm hearing you say two things, and I talk about this often on the podcast, but the term that it haunts me sometimes, and I think it haunts people, is that they have a deficit of imagination. And it sounds like what you're saying is when you got involved in this church and you met this community of people, they gave you a new imagination for what your life could look like. Because before, you're saying all I could imagine was what I was in or what I had seen. I had never seen anybody live a life in this way. So it changed your imagination.
Right. Absolutely. And it's kind of great that it happened the way it did, because the reason why I left my original church was because a lot of legalistic point of views and a lot of you have to be a certain way to be close to God. And when I realized, okay, no, you don't. And this church exposed me to, the other opportunities in life. I felt like the sky was limitless. I really did. I didn't know what that meant for me. I just knew that was a thing. Like, okay, I can finally dream and say my dreams out loud and not be told they're stupid. Or I can finally strive to do something and know that I have a group of people around me that are going to celebrate me and not find one little thing to criticize to take away from that excitement or that accomplishment.
So, Tanorria, let's say there's somebody's listening right now and they're in an abusive relationship. They're in an abusive marriage. They're in a place of fear of their life, of their safety, of their security. If you could get in a time machine right now, and now you got Tanorria's table. You've been on national TV. You've got your own career. You're building a whole business around your gift that God's given you. If you get in a time machine and go sit next to Tanorria, maybe a decade ago?
Yeah.
What do you say to her, and what do you say to her that's listening right now that may be in a place like that?
I would say that you are valuable, you are worthy, that you are enough, and that you need to say what's happening out loud.
Talk about that.
I tended to make excuses or just put on a happy face and, wear a mask to cover up what was going on, or not necessarily even cover it up, but to kind of lessen it so it didn't seem as bad. And I did that because I was concerned about what people would think about me, what people would think about my ex-husband, what people would think about, that everything I'd accomplished up to that point wouldn't matter anymore, that all they would think about is the situation that I was in. And so I didn't tend to say things out loud or really speak up. And so if there's even just one safe person to speak out loud to, they may not be able to solve all your problems. That may not be their purpose, but they may be able to guide you to the right person or the right group of people or the right whatever to help you solve that issue.
Yeah, I love it. And I totally agree with you. And that's, one of the things we talk about in the podcast so much is we really believe that each and every person has been created on purpose and for a purpose. And I can guarantee you, if you are in an abusive or a fearful situation in your life, that is not what God has created you for, right?
Right.
I mean, Christ says he came to bring us freedom. He came to set us free. And if you feel in bondage or held down or imprisoned by fear, whether it be from physical abuse or mental or emotional abuse, that is not what God has created you for. And I love what you're saying, Tanorria, is find a trusted person who you can begin to speak the truth about the situation you're in. Like you said, it's not going to be a magic bullet and fix it.
Right.
But it truly is the understanding that the truth will begin the process of setting us free. And so you took that process and what was the time frame between that transition and marriage and getting out of that dangerous situation and the day that we sat down and talked about these dreams about Tanorria's Table?
I would say it was probably 2.5 years. Yeah. From the time that I got married, it was not good. Stayed in the marriage for about 2 years. And then about 6 months later is about when I met you and went to Disciple X and had my mentor who made me go. Thank goodness she made me go.
Yeah. Do you remember the moment or the season? I guess you remember the season, but do you remember the moment when the dream Tanorria's Table came into your mind?
Yes. I had a friend of mine who wanted to surprise his wife for their anniversary. And he had like this whole day planned for her. And he asked me to have a meal cooked in their home ready when they got there. So he gave me the key to his apartment, let me in. I prepared a meal, left it in the oven, and walked away. And I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. I kind of want to do that like all the time. So, and I think in that moment, I realized like people have a need for this and it can be done. And especially here in the Midwest, it's not incredibly common to do things like that. So I honestly, up until probably 2 years ago, thought that I was supposed to leave Indiana and go do it somewhere else.
Really?
But now, I have to say I like Indiana now.
Hey, it was a slow burn for me too. Just embrace it.
Oh, yeah, it was slow burn. And Indiana loves me. So, yeah, when I first pursued the idea of Tanorria's Table, I was so convinced that I had to leave Indiana to do it. So I was even applying for corporate jobs outside of Indiana. I was looking for opportunities at like Kraft Foods Test Kitchen that isn't in Indiana or other things like that. Even during my MasterChef journey, I thought I'm going to come back and Hollywood's going to sweep me up. And I'm still right here. And God was like, no, girl, you're going to stay right here and you're going to serve the community that loves you. So,
well, I think there's a huge principle there, Tanorria, is that so often I think we are, we get to the place where we're looking for our plan, the way it's going to work, the way we want it to. But I think there's got to be, I know for me, there's a piece to get to the place of going, no, you know what? I'm going to be able to rest and have peace in how of what God's plan is for it, not exactly how or where or with who that I want it to be.
Yeah. God made very clear that his plan is the best plan through my MasterChef journey.
Okay.
And even looking back through my divorce, like I had moments where I would ask God, like, why did you even let any of that happen at all? Like, why did we even have to have that time period in my life? But no, like staying at my corporate career for 15 years, like I'm using that skill set now to run my business and going through all of the ups and downs I did through my marriage, like that established a community. It brought me to my church home. It gave me a fire and a will that I didn't know I had. So I truly, truly know that like all the stuff that God does is there for a reason.
I love it. There's this one of the stories in the Bible that I love is the story when Jesus feeds the 5,000. Afterwards, he has the disciples go pick up all the extras, right? All the bits and pieces that were left, and it says that they filled 12 basketfuls of leftovers.
Yeah,
and I love it because like how many disciples were there? There's 12, right? So they serve this, they do this, they think these are all the wasted part of the journey, but no, it's actually the thing that sustains the people closest to Jesus. And so I love that you brought that out. And I want you to hear that if you're listening right now and you think, you know what, there are a bunch of scraps of my life laying around. Like, this is the wasted time. This is the wasted career. This is the wasted marriage. It's like, no, it's not. Like, all those bits and pieces are not wasted. With Christ, with Jesus, nothing is wasted. He wants to sweep all of that back up, and it actually does become, like you're saying, Tanorria, it becomes the things that sustain you in the season to come.
Right. And Jesus
Beautiful.
is the only one that can make leftovers amazing. Any other chef would tell you, I don't want those stinking leftovers, but Jesus can make them amazing.
He can do that. So let's go back to the MasterChef. If people don't know MasterChef, it's great. It's a reality TV show, cooking show with Gordon Ramsay, who the moment you said something about his dreamy blue eyes.
He's so dreamy.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. Now, every time I see Gordon Ramsay on TV, I'm like, he really does have some blue eyes.
They're like the ocean, man.
But he's fiery. He's the guy, right? He does the Hell's Kitchen show as well, right?
Yes.
And he yells at people and he's crazy. But how the heck did a girl from Indiana who was working at a credit union all of a sudden show up in the top 5 of a national cooking TV show?
Yeah, this is so funny. This showed up on my Facebook timeline like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was watching MasterChef and said, she posted on Facebook, I'm watching MasterChef and I totally think Tanorria should do one of these shows. And she tagged me. And I thought, I'm not doing MasterChef. Gordon Ramsay yells. And she's like, well, not this show, but a show. And for some reason, I just studied MasterChef after that. I think that was about 2 seasons before me. And so I studied that show. I watched it. And I realized that it was home cooks because I just went back to me not being qualified. I'm not qualified. I'm not a chef. I don't have the right skill set. I don't have the technical training. And then I realized, it's home cooks. I can totally do that. And even some of the things I watched them do, I still thought, I can't do that.
Yeah, you said you graduated from the Culinary Institute of my parents and grandparents.
Yes. Yes. I know everything about butter. I know everything about cooking from scratch. My dad, I vividly remember as a little girl, my dad said, don't ever bring stovetop stuffing in our house again to my mom. So that was my culinary training, is you better know how to make it from scratch.
But let's not miss this. You said, so a friend throws a random thing. You should do this.
Yeah.
It something inside of you comes alive, right? You get excited. But immediately, I know Lisa Graff from Radio Theology talk about the gremlins in our mind, right?
Yeah.
Immediately, you can't, you don't, you're not like, all the reasons to shut that dream down, but you didn't listen to him.
No, and honestly, it's because of my tribe of people. That's totally why. The second season, the first season, I studied it, and I think I wasn't in town during auditions. Like, I had to go to a conference or something. So I'm like, okay, obviously I'm not going to pursue it now. But the next year, I studied it again, and I saw when auditions came up. And I'm the type of person, I don't say a lot of things out loud because I'm terrified I will fail, and I don't want anyone to hold me accountable. That's just my truth. But I said this out loud. I posted on Facebook. I said, MasterChef auditions are coming up. I wonder if I should do it. And, of course, tons of people chimed in. And at this point, I had been feeding lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
And so tons of people chimed in. And one of my closest friends, she knows I always say if it doesn't go on my calendar, it doesn't get done. She put it on my calendar. Like, she sent me a calendar request saying, we're going to Chicago for MasterChef audition.
Wow.
I was like, oh, man. Okay, well, it's on my calendar. And if I click accept, crap, I click accept. What am I thinking? And even then, I still thought, okay, I'm not really going to make it, but whatever. I'll go, and then maybe next year I'll know what to expect and I can do it again. But I'm telling you what, Jesus was so with me when I auditioned. I had 2 of my good friends. We went to Chicago for the weekend. I filled our hotel room with pots and pans and food and a cooler and all these things. And I coordinated another friend whose parents lived really close to the audition location so I could cook. And so I cooked, and then I'm walking down the Magnificent Mile in 5-inch hot pink stiletto heels carrying a cooler ready for my audition. I was in it to win it. And I get there, and I don't know. It was the Lord. I keep saying I don't know, but it was totally the Lord. It was like, girl, you got this. And I went into that audition room. I was so confident. Almost confident to a fault, almost. I was so confident, and I was, sizing up my competition. Yeah, I got this. And I think the only time I got a little nervous was when they were calling off our numbers to say if we moved on. And my number was, the second to last. So that was, an awful feeling waiting to hear my number called. But even when we went on to the next round, I was sitting in that room. And that was a super aha moment for me, too, because I was sitting in a room with a bunch of other people who were as passionate about food as I was. And I really had never experienced that before. But I even just felt like I got this. On to the next round, and that was when cameras got in my face. And I thought I would be scared, but once again, that corporate training that I had to stand up in front of adults and teach them in front of a video camera once a month, and I did that for 8 years. So that's why it's so easy for me to not be fazed by a TV camera now. Actually, I think that's the only time I have personality now is when there's a microphone and a camera. I'm like, hello, everyone. Otherwise, I'm like, no, I have no personality. But I felt great about this audition, and I just watched God orchestrate all of the people in my life and all of the things I had to accomplish for the audition process, and things that I thought, oh no, there's no way, the timing of that isn't going to work. This isn't going to happen, and it all just fell into place.
Wow. So you go on the show. It's shot out in L.A.
Yes.
So you go out in L.A. You're out there for weeks. You get into the top 5. I watched the whole finale. I think you got robbed still. I'm still upset about it. But so that happens, and you could have just said, wow, that was neat. Great, I was on TV. I got a lot of exposure. Okay, let's just go back to the real world. Let me go get another bank job. Right. This is done. But you haven't. So tell me about developing Tanoria's Table and now this dream that has become your life.
Oh, my word. I have no idea what I'm doing every single day, but I love it.
Yeah.
I pretty much told God, okay, when we go out to MasterChef, like, I'm going to win this and I'm not going back to my corporate job. Okay, it's me and you, Lord. We got this.
Yeah.
Well, obviously I didn't win, but he made it very clear that it was time for me to go.
Yeah.
And leaving my corporate job of 15 years with a boss that I absolutely adored it was harder than getting a divorce. That's how hard, because my corporate job saw me graduate college. They saw me buy a house. They saw me get married. They saw me get divorced. They saw me grow up.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard to leave that. But I remember after leaving MasterChef, there were several devotions that popped up either in my email or as I was reading some books that popped up, and it was just God whispering, go, it's time. I've got you. And the day I left, there was one all about provision. And that was my biggest fear, was leaving my cozy, comfortable, well-paying job.
Yeah.
But there was one all about provision. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And so now I hustle hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that fact. And one of the things we talk about in spiritual DNA, I talk about the kind of relationship that we've been invited into with God is actually a covenant. And the grounds of a covenant is the person who is in greater power or strength or authority promises to protect and provide for the other person, right? And they on their life, right? Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that when we're in a covenant relationship with God, like through Jesus, that he actually says, listen, if you'll trust me and understand the context in the ground rules of this covenant, I will protect and I will provide for you. And that's so great that you share that. I know when I stepped away from my full-time, job in a church and started everything we're doing with Blackbird Mission is that was the same word of like, listen, like you have to trust me for provision. But it doesn't mean you don't work hard. It doesn't mean that you don't hustle.
No, this is the hardest I've ever worked in my life. But I'm doing it for me, and I know that it is glorifying God's kingdom.
Yeah.
And that makes every time I cry, every time I feel like I'm not succeeding, every failed experience through this self-employment process, it makes it worth it. And I can't say that about a corporate job that I'm not meant to be in anymore.
Yeah. I love it, and I've loved just watching, the development of your story and continue to see where it goes. I'm excited. We're recording this podcast today, and then tomorrow, you actually, you've been helping a lot of charities raise thousands and thousands of dollars by allowing them to auction off, Tanorria's Table experiences, and I get to actually be at one tomorrow, which will be my second or third one, and I can't wait. I feel like tomorrow's Christmas morning. It's an unbelievable joy, Tanorria, to watch. The great part about if you want it, you got to experience one of these. You need to go to tanorriastable.com and book Tanorria to come and do a home cooking situation, because it's just breathtaking almost to watch you, to get to stand there in the kitchen and talk with you and watch you create amazing food that I usually can't pronounce half of it, and it's flavors. The first time I came, you had like pickled watermelon and chicken.
I know, right?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know you could pickle watermelon, but it was one of the most amazing flavor explosions that I've ever experienced, in my taste buds. So go check out tanorriastable.com. There's more about her story on there. If people want to stay in contact with you, Tanorria, what's one of the best ways to do it?
Instagram and Facebook are kind of my jam right now.
Yeah.
So at Tanorria's Table on Instagram and on Facebook, you can find me. You can go to my website, tanorriastable.com, if you want to email me and talk about business. But
and we're based in the Midwest here, but if somebody, we've got a listener from Australia. If
Yeah.
they want a Tanorria's Table
Totally.
situation, you jump on a plane to go to Australia?
Yes, people have sent me out to North Carolina. I've got someone ready to send me to Georgia. I will go wherever you want me to feed you.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. All right, lightning round real quick, Tanorria, then we
Okay.
got to say goodbye. I need to know a book, a movie, and a band or musician that's influenced your life.
Okay, so the book I'm actually reading right now is called I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing.
You know, I saw somebody post something about that on Facebook the other day. Really good?
So good. I mean, she is killing me softly with her song. It is so good.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm reading that right now. And that's just the pitter patters of my diversity inclusion heart. A movie that has okay, so this is so cheesy, but the movie The Wedding Planner is what got me into the hospitality industry.
Huh.
I thought I was going to be a wedding planner when I went to college. Well, after several other majors, I thought I was going to be a wedding planner. And I'm not, but it exposed me, like that pursuit exposed me to the hospitality industry. So I can say that did change my life. Thank you, J-Lo.
Mm-hmm.
And a song.
Yeah, or a band,
song or a
musician,
band.
something.
I mean, Beyonce, come on now.
Queen Bee.
Yeah, Queen. She's like girl power. And I always think, if Beyonce can do it, so can I. Like, she's like conquering the world. So
I've literally never thought that myself. I've thought if Beyonce can do it, I probably can't.
I mean, that's the reality, but you aspire
Okay,
to that.
Yes, I will give you that. Tanorria, give us a parting word of wisdom, and then we'll say goodbye.
Ooh, a parting word of wisdom. My word of wisdom is actually what I'm like super into right now for myself, and that is, it is okay to dream. It is okay to say your dreams out loud. Write them down. Set goals. Be fearless.
Be fearless. I love it. I love it. I love it. Tanorria Askew right here on the Born to Be podcast, tanorriastable.com. I don't care if you're in Australia, Indiana, California, whatever, book her. She will come and make the most amazing meal for you and your friends. Or maybe you want to be a part of having her come in and do a unity table. You can get all that information, connect with her on Facebook, Instagram, or go to tanorriastable.com. Tanorria, I love it. I can't wait to eat your food tomorrow night.
Great.
And we'll see you at the next time, the next episode here at the Born to Be podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Born to Be podcast, where we believe you were created on purpose and for a purpose. Each week, we continue to deliver inspiration and interviews with today's top thought leaders who are living out their unique calling every single day. Be sure to catch us on Sunday with our next episode. Are you ready to discover your true identity and become who you were born to be? Then follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The Born to Be podcast, the future's yet to be created, with your host, Darren Earlywine.